The final day of racing for leg 2 of the Ocean Race Europe, and the last few hours and few miles to gain an edge over your rivals. For the VO65 class, it's been an incredibly arduous leg with a tough downwind and then through the Straits of Gibraltar. But let's not forget, for the Imoca 60s, the upwind sailing has always been something that the boats were going to struggle at. At the moment, we have the VO65s ahead of the Imoca 60s, and at the back of the Imoca 60s, when we left them yesterday, sailing in that hole, Team Germany's skipper Robert Stanjek was reflecting on the past few hours.
We did 2 mistakes. We went, we basically tacked too early onto the long tack towards the coastline, and then we've been a second time on the wrong side of the game. So it went all so quick, so we died. No wind, while the others could drive and then left and stretched out big time. So Rubik has one more, has less wind inshore. So we lost our wind electronics, so we basically have no data on board. The only data we have is boat speed. Anyway, we were leading afterwards the fleet into the second night. Now it's full on helming all the time. We can't run the autopilot, so we have 3 Olympian autopilots now, but I can tell you it's very tough to only drive the boat by boat speed numbers, especially in the night.
We're going to leave the Imoca 60s. We're going to come back to their final few miles a little bit later. First of all, let's focus on the VO65s, who are currently leading the 2 fleets into the finish in Alicante, and the boat leading them is Merpoi Foundation Racing Team. Now, if you were watching yesterday's show, you'll know that we were talking about the moment at which to tack back in and sail into the shore. This was a big crunch moment, and for skipper Johan Richomme on board the Portuguese team, he was weighing up his options pretty heavily.
The end of it is thermal breeze in Alicante, so that's okay. In between, for the night, is a bit of a mess. Huh? It's pretty full on.
For everyone or just us?
A bit for everyone, but it's more in the front. Could be a compression, yeah. Should be. Poland is over there, 6 miles straight downwind, so it's almost 9 miles. And the next one is about 10 miles, so it's even more. And then a lot more for the others, like 20, 25. Huh?
How many miles are roughly?
Well, I never look at that. I'm kidding.
You're just there looking at that.
Yeah, I've got too many numbers. My brain is frying. The whole fleet is on board. So the more they keep on going, the easier it is to control everyone. So if they go, we go. But for now, the wind's got to go beyond 60 for us to tack by ourselves. Like steady 60.
Steady at 60. This is the problem of being in the front. You've got to decide when to go, and your rivals can then choose to follow you or to stay out for more. If you go too early, you can't cover them. If you go too late, you might miss the opportunity to do just that. And what Johan Richomme is referring to there when he mentions steady at 60 is the true wind direction. We saw the breeze slowly going to the right. Johan was clearly keen to go if the rest of the fleet did, but if they were going to break ranks and go first, he needed the breeze as far right as 60 or further. Once they did decide to tack, it was getting everybody up and a lot of hard work.
Definitely tacking, yeah?
Yeah, we're done.
Robbie! Tacking! And tack they did, but the first boat to go was actually Amber Sail 2 all the way to the west. The leaders pretty much tacked at just about the same time, with the entire VO65 fleet now sailing towards Alicante. It was Austria Ocean Race Project, then Viva Mexico, then it was Childhood 1 and Sailing Poland getting locked in a little battle. And the more that these 2 teams had to attack and defend each other with tacks, it allowed a little bit of room for the front runners. This was Axonobel Ocean Racing and Merpuri Foundation Racing. They managed to push further ahead, and with a small wind hole being their only obstacle, Alicante was in their sights. It was dark when the two boats arrived just a few miles off from the finish line, still with Merpuri Foundation Racing Team in the lead, Axonobel Ocean Racing Team a little way behind. Tricky conditions, very light, very difficult just to even see what your sails were doing, let alone steer the correct course that would keep the boat most efficient. Axonobel Ocean Racing were hoping for a little bit of a shutdown closer to the shore, but these two boats from the VO65 class actually enjoyed a surprisingly steady breeze at a time when the wind should have been so light to halt their progress and compress the whole fleet. It meant a tight battle between the two of them, but surely for the skippers and the sailors involved, it was a relief not to have the rest of the boats squeezing up behind them. Merpuri Foundation Racing Team crossed the line first to take their first leg win, arguably something that they should have had in leg 1, and the maximum of 7 points. Merpuri Foundation Racing Team are on 11, but Axonobel Ocean Racing, finishing just behind them in second place, are also on 11 points. These two teams locking horns on the water, and for the moment at least on the scoreboard, Merpuri Foundation Racing Team only just getting the benefit of the tiebreak. As the sun came up, it was a very different picture for the two boats behind, now so close that they really couldn't afford to tack or maneuver unless their opponent did. It was a real game of cat and mouse for Sailing Poland and Childhood One. Viva Mexico started to push up from behind and in fact at times really closed the distance while the other two teams slowed down in a bit of a wind bubble. A little bit of a shore wind arrived and all three VO65s traded places and then pushed in for those final few closing miles towards the line. Childhood One just sitting in front of Sailing Poland, but then a bit of disaster on board with an issue with the furler of the masthead code 0. Every time these VO65s tack, they need to furl the masthead code 0, and without being able to furl it up, Childhood One was forced to drop the biggest sail in their inventory for upwind sections and then rehoist it on the new side, hopefully with the furler now fixed. Childhood One with the masthead code 0 back up and hopefully working for the next few tacks, with Sailing Poland and now Viva Mexico closing the gap.
We're third place now. We came from the back and we're almost getting to the finish line. We're a little bit tight with the polish and with the other boat here in the one with Childhood, but we're just waiting for the wind to be in our favor for the finish line.
Viva Mexico now into that fight for the remaining podium place on the finish line. And you can see with every single tack that the VO65s do how much it must have hurt Childhood One not to be able to rely on that furler, at least just for one manoeuvre. The VO65s and the Imoca 60s, in fact, any of the large keel boats with multiple headstays, have to furl that big forward sail, the masthead code 0, so that the clue and the rest of the material of the sail goes in front of the forestay and then you can pull it back out on the other side. Not being able to do that means that your tacks would be so cumbersome, so slow, and in this pressure that would be a death sentence on the speed that you were trying to build towards the finish line. That loss meant that Childhood One was now being severely attacked by Viva Mexico. And every time that Childhood One would try and outmaneuver their rivals, either putting the bow down, putting in a few more tacks to try and get to better pressure, just to windward, sitting on top of them, was Viva Mexico locking down any wriggle room that Childhood One might have. Every time the wind went light, Viva Mexico was able to hold that controlling position on board Childhood One. And it's worth remembering just how hard both of the teams were working to try and get free. Up the top of the rig on both Childhood One and Viva Mexico was a crew member in a harness at the top spotting for breeze. But it wasn't just looking for breeze. If you take a look all the way up there, you'll see as the boats come out of the tack, the big batten, the stiff fiberglass rod inside the sail that bends and bows and gives the sail that shape that we like so much, it can pop the wrong way and get inverted. So both these boats, as they're going through the tack, the crewman at the top is basically bouncing on the sail and kicking the batten to pop the right way. You need to kick it in the right place, not least just to pop the batten, but also not to put a foot through the sails. They are strong, but you don't really want to test that. But sailing upwind with the batten inverted would have been so slow and so detrimental to your pace. So whenever you see these crew members up the top, it's not just about spotting the breeze. Viva Mexico and Childhood One continued to push towards the line, but the surprising thing was the tighter that these two boats fought together and the more that Viva Mexico pushed Childhood One into the shore and locked down their tactical options, it allowed Sailing Poland, who had broken free and sailed out to the right-hand side of the track into arguably favour breeze, it allowed the Polish team to come in at a much better angle. And while those two boats were jockeying around, Bauerbecking and Sailing Poland managed to sail over the top into the line unobstructed and take third place in leg two. A fantastic performance for Sailing Poland, but disappointment for Childhood One.
Yeah, unfortunately we had a broken furler, it jammed, so we had to change it, and it was cost us dearly. And we got on the back foot and they overtook us. Light winds, a little bit of a lottery, but I think Sailing Poland got the third place they deserved. We should have had fourth at least, but disappointing. We deserve more after this leg.
So now it's the turn of the Imoca 60s, and really the story of leg two have been the story of all the big catch-ups. I mean, we've had 11th Hour Racing, who at this point in the afternoon where we left things yesterday, were now in fourth place. But just look here at what happens to Offshore Team Germany. As the fleet bounce out to the right-hand side, Offshore Team Germany comes over on a shift that nobody else gets and starts to really be able to attack the others.
We're going to hike it down. We're getting them. Here we come. Watch out. Watch out, Corum. We're coming.
Offshore Team Germany sailed the shift all the way into the mix, and Corum decided to do something a bit radical, go to the left-hand side and go much more inshore compared to the rest of the fleet. Linked Out did a good job of positioning themselves to cover both options, but as everybody started to head towards Alicante, it was pretty clear who had the breeze, and unfortunately, it wasn't Corum.
The arrival is now straight
40 miles on the back.
Voilà.
Okay. So we can be first, second or last?
Yes.
Okay. We see that tonight.
Yes.
While there were possibilities for Corum on the inshore course, it wasn't looking good with every hour that ticked down. Linked Out still held the lead with Offshore Team Germany behind, pushing pretty hard in second place. And as we got close to the finish line and the potential for a shutdown, the big question was how much was the Imoca 60s going to compress? Well, Linked Out held on to the lead and sailed a pretty impressive final close beat into the line, crossing the line and taking the win in the Imoca class in leg two, and with it the maximum of 5 points. But of course the job wasn't over, because behind them, now coming up into second place, was Offshore Team Germany, the boat that had suffered so hard in the earlier stages in leg two. With a second place on leg two, Offshore Team Germany get 9 points overall, and this sees them tied now for first place with Linked Out in the Imoca 60s. And then another amazing story. Third place in the Imoca 60s in leg two goes to 11th Hour Racing. This boat had a 75, maybe 80 mile deficit when they started the leg, having to go back in to check their boat after striking an anchor line. But 11th Hour Racing have done something quite incredible, sailing with a boat that is far below its optimum performance, sailing with only one foil. They take the third spot on the podium. Some big up and down spread over the last 2.5 days on leg two. We've got one more offshore leg to go and then a coastal, both scoring, both can have a big effect on the scoreboard. And in the Imoca 60s and the VO 65s, we've got a lot of ties to break with the racing ahead. We're going to leave you today with some words from the winners of each class and of course, everything and all the action that we didn't get a chance to fit into today's show. Enjoy.
Yeah, it was a long fight with Axo, getting the miles back little after little, and I managed to overtake them yesterday afternoon, and yeah, managed to hang on to our lead after that, which was very tough.
I'm very happy to win this race, and I'm very proud of my crew and my team, all my team.